Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. And today I'm reviewing Final Fusion, a game by Gindhi, likely best known for their Enchanters game, a series of games and expansions all about building a magical weapon, enchanting it, and going through a whole sequence of, well, destroying and things and getting what you want, and that's not the point of this video. This video is about Final Fusion. Now, Final Fusion is going to be a game that is hard not to compare to Smash Up, although the two games are drastically different. They share a theme, so to speak, but the gameplay has, past sharing card play, there's no real similarity. You see, in Final Fusion, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be controlling two races. Each character is going to take on two different races and then mash them up. So in this case, I have the Black Knights and the Chess Stars, which are, a fun little combo there. Or perhaps I'm using the Dinosaurs and the Wild West spots, combining those. In this case, we have the Crab People and the Mantises combined with the Observers and the Vikings, and with those different races that you combine, you're going to combine their decks and then proceed to play the game. So the decks are fairly small. You're going to have 4 cards per race, resulting in a very small and controlled deck in the game. And then from there, you're going to launch into battle. And battle here consists of running around various planets, basically colonizing different aspects of it, getting your influence on the board. And then once you're powerful enough, planting a flag, so to speak, by trying to acquire these VP chips and eventually trying to achieve Final Fusion. This game is all about setting up for the final battle, this final fusion of your two races or whatnot. And if you successfully complete your Final Fusion, you win the game. That's basically it. You could theoretically start the game by saying, I am attempting Final Fusion. And if you win, which you probably won't, but if you win, then you win the game. But really, this game requires that you actually sit there and build up along the way. You see, the game has either a short game or a long game, but either way, you walk into Final Fusion weakened. You walk in with a penalty to your attack strength in that battle, which means the only way to overcome that penalty is to slowly acquire these VP chips, which will augment you when you go into Final Fusion, which means the first chip you get is literally just bringing you back to a stable point in the game, and subsequent chips start making it so that you can actually achieve that Final Fusion. You see, when you sit there and say, I'm going for the final battle, other players, well, they don't want you to win. It's part of the game. So they're going to go ahead and attack you back. They're going to try to interrupt you. You might survive the first person. You might survive the second person. But how many players, how many attacks can you survive when you decide to initiate Final Fusion in this game? The game sequence is going to be each person is going to take 2 actions with each of their fleets. These miniatures represent your fleets, and you're going to take 2 actions. The actions are on this handy-dandy player aid, but most of the actions come down to either getting a resource, such as drawing a card, getting a science token, or perhaps increasing your population on your fleet, which will add to your strength. Taking the action of a planet, generally far better than the alternative. The problem is you can only take 1 action. You can only take each action once per turn. So while you can take 2 actions, you cannot take the same action twice. So sometimes it's worth kind of just sitting there, taking your planet action, then augmenting something else. Moving around the board is going to be another thing. You can move around the board and potentially crossing black holes, which will lose you population. But otherwise, moving around, doing what you need, potentially swapping with other people that you have, or perhaps going into battle against other people. All of these are going to be actions you can take, but there's other actions you can take as well. There's going to be free actions, such as being able to develop your deck, because you start with your 4 cards per race, 8 total cards, but then from there you're going to have this tech market where you can choose to augment your deck. You're going to be able to pay science resources in order to get more cards, which will go straight to your hand, and then you can go ahead and use those in battle, and of course they cycle into your deck as well, in battle and wherever it is that's useful in the game. There are also going to be free actions you can take as well. Some cards have a free action icon on them, and there's a few other things such as colonizing over there. Starting the process of colonizing a planet will cost an action. Starting the extraction of victory point is an action, and of course starting Final Fusion is an action. The gameplay is going to come down to effectively managing your resources to build yourself up in this game. You see, different things will help you in battle. Having a stronger fleet will help you in battle. Having better cards in your hand will help you in battle. Having presence on planets will help you in battle. You're going to have people allying with you along the way. Well, speaking of allies, you can get other people around the table to choose to ally with you or not. Generally, that only works if you're losing. People tend to want to ally with people losing. They don't want to help you achieve Final Fusion. So that's a balance you're going to have to worry about over there. Developing your fleet, increasing your fleet, all these things are going to help. So you're trying to figure out what resource conversion is going to work best for you in this game. What is the fewest number of actions you can take to ultimately get to a point where you can harvest these victory point chips and then ultimately harvest Final Fusion. Just to give you a few basic examples. On the mushroom planet over here, you can go ahead and spend an action to get a science resource and to increase your fleet. This person's at full, so that's not that helpful. On the swamp planet, you can choose to lose a fleet member in order to get 3 science. You're sending your people out. It's a little bit hazardous terrain or whatnot. You end up losing some of your fleet, but they do come back with some excellent samples that will be useful when it comes down to that tech market later. Over here on the urban planet, you're going to be able to spend an action to get two population onto your ship. Over here on the temperate planet, you can draw 2 cards, and the water planet is going to be a combination of a population and drawing cards. Now, this is set up for a 2-player game, which we'll get to in my review, but not my recommended player count for this game. But then from there, you have more planets in this game, and again, keep in mind, this is the part where I tell you this is very much just a prototype. This is going to be, I don't know what's going to be in the final version of the game. I don't know how many races is going to be. I don't know how many planets there are going to be. I don't know how many extra cards. I don't know what there will be in the final version of the game. As far as this one, there's already a wide variety of the planets you can use, a wide variety of the way you can combine these 8 different races that I have in the prototype over here, plus of course the tech market full of cards over there, as well as the traits over here. Do all that most efficiently, or set yourself up by drawing cards, by putting yourself around the board, by getting population, by increasing your fleets, and eventually when you are ready, start the process of Final Fusion. You're going to sit there and take an action. You're going to say, I am starting Final Fusion. I think I'm well entrenched. I have my ally here. I have the planet over here. I have a full fleet. And of course, I have a hand. Let's just pretend I have a hand of 5 cards. Ready to go. Excellent. 5 cards. Go ahead. Bring it on. And that's when people will indeed bring it on. You see, on your next turn, you can bet that somebody else will turn around and try to attack you, because that's how they stop you from winning. You may survive that attack. You're going to go ahead and go through the battle sequence. The battle sequence is going to be on the other side of the player 8 over here, and effectively involves counting up some basic stats like your fleets, your allies, the planet, all of that. From there, both players get to play a tactic card face down. So perhaps I play, well, I'm going to play this card face down. That's actually a very good card to play face down right now. From there, once both players have played a card face down, you're going to be able to play any other planning card. So I'm going to play this planning card to add 2 when defending. I'm currently defending against Final Fusion, so that's helpful. I'm going to add another Corellian infantry, so another 2 when defending. So far I'm at +4, plus my tactics card, plus my other augments over there. And then once we reveal the tactics card, once we're done with our planning, we're going to reveal the tactics card where I played my best card, the Queen of Depths, +6 when defending. That is a solid card, and in fact, the crab people, their strength is being strong at defending. A solid race to choose if you think you're going to want to try to initiate Final Fusion, which everyone's going to want to initiate it, but you may be prepared for that aspect of the game. From there, once you're done, you're going to play support cards. I have no support cards, but once that final reveal and the planning cards are done, you can play support cards. After that, determine who won or who lost. There's going to be a little battle outcome chart as far as what happens when you win or lose, but if you were attempting Final Fusion and you win, well then you just win the whole game. That effectively is Final Fusion. It's quick, it's punchy, it basically is going to be a game all about setting yourself up to survive and to initiate combats as necessary. One more thing worth mentioning, we're going to have our little track. Every player is going to have their own track over here, and every time you colonize a planet, you advance in the track, unlocking science, unlocking victory point tokens, unlocking trait cards. Trait cards are going to be these cards over here that will help you both either in battle or other abilities. Then you have your domination track for whenever you win battles, which is another way of going up that track. And then you always have a home-rolled action where you can retreat to in case you got punched a little too hard, where you can spend an action to increase your fleet size by 3. That is basically the game of Final Fusion. Lots to go on here, but effectively, this is a simple deck building, punch your opponent in the face until someone wins kind of game. And I don't mean that in a bad way at all. The core combat it's fast, it's punchy. The game length is, well, to be fair, there's a short game and a long game in the game, but the game length either way is going to be on the shorter side. This is not a long hour-and-a-half sprawl. This is a game where you pick your race, you combine things together, you start deck building, you hit each other back and forth until eventually one person comes out the winner. Along the way, you'll be getting things like power-ups from the traits over here. The traits are going to give you a ton of different things you can do to augment your abilities, both from these traits over here, these traits. You can basically draw 2 traits whenever you get a trait and pick one of them to add to your specific fleet. And it's going to be specific to a fleet. It's not going to be to you as a player, but rather it's going to go on your fleet. So for instance, my mantises over here have an ability that they get +1 strength when they are defending as an ally, which can be very helpful. That little extra strength here and there can very much matter when it comes down to those battles that you need to, well, win to win the game. Past that, it's deck building already. Deck building is a genre that I like to begin with, and the mix up of factions with having a small selection of cards, having 4 cards per faction, means you're going to see your core faction cards on a regular basis. You don't draw up at the end of your turn, you have to earn every single draw using the actions in the game. But combine the tech market with the handful of cards you start with, and it means you'll be cycling through the same cards a lot. This is not a deck building game where your cards are going to get lost in the lost in the shuffle, no pun intended there, but it's going to be one where you see the cards you buy again and again as you go through this fairly short, fairly condensed, fairly fast and punchy experience. The miniatures are great. The art is, the miniatures generally are great. I'm going to go ahead and try to show this to you without breaking them. This is a prototype, so we have resin miniatures, which are going to be, let me see if I can show you these. So look at the quality on those miniatures. I don't know what the Kickstarter is going to have. Link to the Kickstarter down below, by the way. I don't know what the Kickstarter is going to have in terms of their options. I don't know if these are painted, not painted, but keep an eye on that to see that. But the quality on these miniatures is amazing. The unique sculpts, the artwork in the game, all of that is really solid. In fact, I'd show you more miniatures, but there's only so many I have that actually survived transit because resin, if you don't know, can be incredibly brittle if you're not careful. You want to be very careful with these miniatures, but look at those. I'm going to go ahead and show you some more over here. We got the dinosaurs with a broken arm, so forgive that over there. And then we have over here the dinosaurs, which are, that was the chest stars. I'm going to have the dino, whatever they were called, there as well. So lots of options in terms of the miniatures. Oh, look at that adorable pet. I'm going to show that to you again. That adorable little pet over there. Oh, there we go. Look at the little raptor by his side. So yeah, great art, great miniatures, lots to go over there, and then just powers left, right, and center. There's powers from the tech market, powers from your inherent decks, powers from the traits. Each planet provides their own unique ability, which again, as you add more of these, you can mix that up even further. We haven't talked about one thing, which is planets are going to have a side A and a side B. Side A is going to give you a default ability, plain and simple. You lose a science, you get 3 people. Side B is going to give you an ability on it that on defeat or on winning on that planet, different planets will have different things, you'll also have other things to be noteworthy. So you might gain or lose other things, just giving you more strategic choice as far as how this game will develop. That's all the things I like about the game. As far as things I don't like, there's really only 2 things I don't like about Final Fusion. To begin with, and I'll have caveats to this as well, I did not like the 2-player experience of this game. The 2-player mode of this game resulted in my wife and I playing the game, and then basically one of us tried to attempt Final Fusion a few turns in, and they were able to survive and last and win the game, which wasn't the way I would ideally have wanted it to go, because it's supposed to be a short and punchy game, but there's a limit to how short and punchy it's supposed to be. Because the problem you have in a 2-player game is you don't have, when you attempt that Final Fusion, you have one player who can try to stop you, and sure, you have that slight disadvantage you have to be mindful of, but if that player fails, if you have a good hand, then you can actually end this game in like 20 minutes, which is short and punchy, but shorter and punchier than I was looking for. Versus in a 3-player game or a 4-player game, I would say even 3 is enough. 4 players, I don't know, I assume it adds more. I've only played this at 2 and 3, but even in a 3-player game, that extra player is all the difference in the world, because as soon as you survive that first battle against, well, whoever the first person who attacked you was, you have a second person attacking you, and you've just used up your good cards in that battle. So that is something that I did not love the 2-player experience of this game. For what it's worth, I've spoken to designers about it because our experience was so off that I would not play this again at 2, and they said that it does vary and it can matter in terms of how different things play out. We likely had a bit of an anomaly of a deck that was a little mismatched in the beginning and just a lucky draw or whatever, because again, you start the game with a penalty to your Final Fusion. All that said, that could well be true, and it may well be that 2 players is a very fine experience. For myself, our 2-player experience was not great. Past that, I want more from the cards in this game. I want the cards to give me more unique things to do in the game. Now, what I mean by that is the traits are going to give you a lot of fun things, but the core tech market mostly comes down to small fluctuations in their strength and the way they contribute the strength. So this card gives you 3 strength, that card gives you 2 strength. This card gives you 3 strength as a tactic card, that gives you 1 strength as a planning card. It's going to be mostly minor fluctuations in the way that they give you strength. There will be other cards, so for instance, this automated factory over here, as an action, you can gain a fleet, gain a science, and draw 2 cards. That's a fun card. I want more things like this in the deck. As you go through most of the cards in the deck, most of them are going to come down to strength and strength modifications. There are a few other cards here and there, but I want more creativity and more interesting abilities from this game. Again, I spoke to designers about this, and they said it's a fast, punchy, hit-em-up game. This is not a combo-tastic deck-building experience with tons of things that interweave, and that's fine, but I like fun, combo-tastic things that interweave with each other in interesting ways. So that's to my personal preference. As far as what I can see others not liking, small few nitpicks here, and again, this is something you have to decide for yourself if it's a problem for you. These are not problems for myself. To begin with, the fleet miniatures are races, not fleets. They're not ships. So if you are concerned with the thematic disconnect there, well, there is a thematic disconnect there. I like the miniatures, and I find ship miniatures often are more boring, so I'm totally okay with this. But it is something worth mentioning that your fleets are just giant miniatures representing your race as opposed to an actual ship. Secondly, it needs to be played by people who enjoy the challenge of attacking people. This game is chock full of people planting the flag saying, I'm going to attempt to harvest this victory point ship, and then it has to survive. You have to survive till your next battle in order to get that. And you're going to rinse and repeat until you're eventually ready to do that with Final Fusion. If other players in this game like to be a little bit more passive, if they like to do their own thing, if they don't like to attack people, this is not a game for you. This is a game where someone says, I'm doing something, and it is your job, it is your responsibility to get straight in their face and say, nuh-uh, no you're not. Now the game rewards you for doing that. It gives you this domination track that you will go up at higher and higher. But I played this with people who are a little confrontation averse, and you're like, I'm getting this victory point ship. And they're like, okay, great, no problem. I'm going to go over here and draw a card, which is fine. That's great. It doesn't work as well for this game. In this game, when people say they are doing things that help them win, you need to get in their face. Otherwise, this Final Fusion just wouldn't be a game for you. And lastly, movement can feel like it doesn't matter much. Now, this is a 2-player setup. 3 and 4 player setups add more planets. But even at 3 or 4 players, well, again, I haven't played at 4, even at 3 players, I felt most of the movement in the game comes down to just, 1 or 2 spots and you can get to anywhere on the board. The game is fairly interconnected. Now, it does not bother me at all. To me, that lends itself to the short and punchy aspect of the game. There's just enough restriction that you do have to sometimes wonder, well, if I go here, then I won't be able to get there next turn. You'd have to occasionally wonder about that. You can generally get where you want without a ton of work. In fact, they have an ability called Space Jump, where you can spend 2 actions, both your actions for the turn, to get absolutely anywhere on the board. So that is intended. It is intended by game design to be a short, condensed galaxy where you can occasionally have to manage where you're going, but for the most part, you can get where you want pretty easily. As far as my final thoughts on Final Fusion for me right now is a 3 out of 5. 3 out of 5, rating scale down below, is going to be basically a solid game that is or isn't in my collection, depending on a variety of factors. And Final Fusion is a game that it's solid. It's good. I enjoy the short punchiness. If I had to choose between playing this and Smash Up, I would choose this any day of the week. Not really a laudable testimony because I didn't particularly enjoy Smash Up. But that said, Final Fusion is fun. Final Fusion is about the deck building. It is about the building up your traits. It is all about how to have a 30 to 45 minute long experience where you simply go through your motions and level up, put your colonization on the planet, get some more fleet, do this, do that, get a trait, add some cards, go to the tech market, and then just start punching each other in the face. It is a fast, quick, streamlined experience which is all about dealing damage to others. It's just not higher for me on my scale because it lacks that depth that makes a game a 4 or 5, an amazing experience. It is fun, it is solid, it is easy to jump into, it is easy to play, worth checking out. It's on Kickstarter, gorgeous miniatures. I will be paying attention on the Kickstarter, by the way, to see what else the game adds, because this very much falls in the category that if there's some more, I don't know what's going to be added, but if there's more interesting stuff, if there's more races that are interesting, there's more planets that are interesting, because the planets have the same problem, by the way. If you go through the planets, problem being a limited term, but if you go through the planets, you're going to see all the resources there are basically going to come down to variations of cards, people, and science. That's all you're going to have in the game. Cards, people, and science are all the resources there. There's not more interesting different abilities. It comes down to the slight adjustments in how those play out. Past that's been my review for Final Fusion. Hope you've enjoyed. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and I hope you have a good one.